Hello, intrepid viewers and trendsetters from around the world. I'm coming to you, Dr. Lena Rodriguez. I'm a lecturer in sociology and anthropology, or at least I was till I became a YouTube commentator. And we've got a lot to cover today, including will the voter laws in Georgia be reversed? These are all your questions. Will there be an appeal by, he'll remain nameless on this channel, but he who was convicted this week, we'll be talking about that. The need for justice reinvestment. Remember that term? I'll get back to that. And I also want to look at on top of the Canadian elections, but I want to also see if I can channel today the mother of Emmett Till and see what she has to say about this. So, a massive amount. Let's go. So, the Georgia laws first. These ridiculous laws. I come from a state in Australia that had gerrymandering and that had all sorts of, lifelong corruption. We even had one lawmaker, Russ Hines, who was famously known as the Minister for Everything. He was in charge of police and horse racing and everything. Would you put those two together? All of it. Okay, so looking at Georgia now, what will happen down the track? It was a miracle in Georgia, we mustn't forget that, getting those 2 last-minute seats. I think it was an intervention from the beyond. How amazing was that? Okay, so will these laws and similar laws in similar states, will they be reversed? Okay, if only we could clone Stacey Abrams and a few others, key players, wouldn't it be a great world? So let's have a look at that question. Will those laws be reversed? There's a chance of it. So, the stranger of tides. This is the Japaridze deck. Let me just, if I can get it out of the box, I'll show you how to spell it. Because people always write and ask. The Japaridze Tarot. They're beautiful cards. I warn you, they are hard to read. So, the stranger of tides, tides of cups. This is mysterious workings. And in this case, of the GOP. You'd have to think they were worried, but it's more than that. They're so used to running the show. All you have to say is, and again, I'm going to have to talk in code, but you only have to talk about a termination, in this case, of a pregnancy, and you can rule a red state for the next 58 years. That's all you have to do. Right? Nothing to do with policy. You don't have to deliver anything. You can say to people who haven't had a job for 2 generations and their sister-in-law's just dropped from an opioid overdose and someone else has got issues and mental health not being dealt with and not real access to healthcare and appalling education and treating teachers badly and all of that, and you can do it just by using the T word. So they're used to power and they're used to foxing people with power. But here you have the 10 of tides and the 10 of cups. This is peaking. Their ability to control everything has reached its zenith. In other words, they still control just about everything, but it's peaked. And what happens after a peak? It comes down the other side. people will start to see the hand coming through the wall. I love this card. They'll start to see the false promises. They will actually see it. And the King of Fire, in other words, the King of Wands, there'll be a leader yet to emerge. I don't think it's a name we know, yet to emerge in Georgia who will turn it around and light a fire under what is happening there. And people will see, by the light of the fire, people will actually see what's been going on. So will it be reversed? I would say not soon, but yes. I'll stick my neck out and say in 4 years. Hope it's sooner, but I would say yes to that. Okay. Oh, I've been asked about the Broadway producer, Scott Rudin. Obviously another Weinstein character. He has been really aggressively bad and misogynistic. I don't know what the bots will make of the algorithm misogynistic, whether they'll pass it or they won't, but he is. So he has been abusing his power for decades because everyone wants to be in the new Broadway musical and they'll do just about anything. The point is they shouldn't be asked to do just about anything. So will he actually be charged with anything? This is Scott Rudin. Will he be charged? Let's have a look. Ooh. Well, this is another one of those where the world is watching. So although he's far from a household name, most of you mightn't have heard of him. I hadn't until yesterday. Symbolically, the world will be watching in the sense of how do these things unfold and how does America handle them? He's at the moment sitting pretty. I don't think it's too big a statement to say he took the dreams of the young girls and took them away. But this is the card in other decks. It's 3 women celebrating. I think there is going to be a court case. And the King of Cups, his defense is going to be, no, I was like her father. I just wanted to look after her with her clothes off. Yeah, right. Just looking after her. I think it's going to be quite weird. Quite weird. But I think it is going to go ahead as a case. Now, I want to talk here about justice reinvestment before I move on to Canada. It's a bit of a clunky term, right? So we've heard defund the police. The problem with that is it's never going to fly because your average people take comfort in the fact there is a police force that they can ring if someone does something untoward. You think there are enough examples now to know that was a mixed bag, and it shouldn't be. Ringing emergency should not be a high-risk act in itself. You should be able to report a high-risk act. But there's a bit of good news in this, and it came in the form of the story Carriole Horn. Go back 15 years. I told this story earlier in the week in a collaboration. She was an African-American serving officer, identical situation, a senior officer, chokehold. The difference was she did step in. She actually saved the man's life. What was her reward for that? Well, of course, 15 years ago, as now in a lot of cases probably, she lost her position and they stopped her getting her pension and everything about everything. She suffered great personal loss. She did take it to court and this week she won. Here's to Carole. Okay, got to have some wins. Okay. So all the words, retraining, re-education, revitalize, everything has to happen. It has to happen. In all police forces, this is not just an American problem, but the American problem is so grotesque and so bad and so out of control that it is the worst in the first world, you know. It might not be the worst globally, but you know what? It's way ahead of the rest of the first world. And it has to be dealt with. So the things that need to happen, retraining to de-escalate issues. The job should be, you come into a conflicted situation, the first stage should be de-escalate with care and caution and safety. But you don't go in with lethal force. That shouldn't be your first step, pet. I shouldn't have to tell you that from the other side of the world. That should be last resort, not first resort. So they need training in de-escalating. Those who have entered the service for the right reasons, who want to do the right thing to serve their communities, have to have a safe place to report rogue behaviour. It's really important that they are not demonised for doing it. It has to be a shift in culture that there is a safe place to report this. Because as we know, he who shall not be named, who was convicted this week, has a history. And if the history had been acted on, perhaps it would be different today. But it wasn't, and it's still happening. There's the 15-year-old girl dead, the 17-year-old autistic boy in a vicious arrest. Terrible routine stories, you know, the 9-year-old. The 9-year-old? What is wrong? It's saying to me, people are acting from a position of major stress and threat. They're going in. The problem is you are meant to be professionals trained to deal with the stress and the threat, not react like someone else on the street. That's the point of difference. That's why there's a uniform, love. So I will stress again, and as often as needed, the good guys and the good gals, I am not speaking about you. You know the story better than anyone. What we're saying is there's just too many mistakes that have become so normalised. Now, what is the idea behind justice reinvestment? I've been asked this a few times this week. It's experimental. In fact, in the States, you've had a few experiments with it too, and it works. It costs a lot of money to keep people in jail, and it costs even more money to keep juveniles in jail. So if even a portion of that money is spent on diversionary programs for young people in disadvantaged areas, on literacy programs, on all these sort of things, because the majority of men in particular, and a lot of women who are in jail, the literacy is rarely above sort of 7th grade, 8th grade. There's a correlation between literacy and later coming into conflict with the court system. There's a direct correlation. Most of the African American men in jail come from households that are under half the poverty line. There's a direct correlation between poverty and crime. Not that people are morally bad because they're poor. People are forced into behaviours that are high risk in order to make ends meet, that basic impulse to feed your family, and these needs are not getting met by the rest of your society because you have a government who doesn't care about people who are on the bottom. It really, really, really doesn't. You know, it rewards the ultra rich. Most governments do this, but America has the greatest income disparity in the world. And so it's systemic. And I'm a sociologist, so I look at the systemic, not the psychological what made this man do this and this woman do that. We look at what are the social forces that made that path the only choice they had left. That is the issue. And that's the difference between sociology and psychology. Okay, so then on top of all that, you have private prisons. We do in Australia too. Now, my question to you, intrepid viewers, is how on earth do you make a profit from a prison? Or a hospital for that matter, or a school? No, you can't. The only way you make a profit is because the government pays you the contract. Instead of the government running the prison, they pay a private organisation to run the prison. So you, the taxpayer, this is Australia as well, you pay them to run your prisons, but it's called private. So a handful of individuals make a lot of money because they get the government contract and then they starve the bottom. Oh, look, if we keep them in their cells 23 hours a day, we don't have to have so many guards on. If we stop these education programs, that will save money. That's profit for me. Awesome. So you end up with an even worse penal system than you had before, and you, the taxpayer, are still paying. You know, we've got to wake up to these public-private partnerships because there's nothing about them that work. The public ends up paying and the profits are private. That's the only thing. So I'm really worried about that with the infrastructure bill. I hope they pay people real wages, real jobs. I know Biden's talking about union jobs, but that's another issue. I'll talk about another video. So the idea behind justice reinvestment, if you invest on the ground, you save money downstream, right? Spend money upstream, save money downstream. It's the same with public health. So invest not even huge amounts. It's infinitely cheaper than keeping someone in jail, you know. So that's my solution, is justice reinvestment, and it needs to be supported to research it properly. So as an example, in Australia, small country town, they introduced justice reinvestment. They found a lot of the Aboriginal young people were getting arrested over and over for these small things that white kids wouldn't be arrested for. That was a given, right? They'd get a warning. And for the black kids, it's off to court, off to jail. One of the things that was common was driving without a licence. And in this town that was experimenting with justice reinvestment, what they did was the council paid for all the young people to have driving lessons and to pay for their driver's licenses, right? And then they found that these offences dropped through the floor, and that meant fewer young people getting into the system, because once you're in the system, life is really a downhill trajectory from there. And it has stopped a lot of 17, 18, 19-year-olds going to jail, right? Another one was a gymnasium where different well-known athletes, and they were boxers and runners and footballers and stuff, would volunteer their time at this gymnasium, and they would work with young people. And it didn't cost much because they were volunteers. They only had to pay for the rent of the gymnasium, and they found arrests in that whole real ghetto neighbourhood dropped. Small amounts of money, just small targeted amounts of money. Not rocket science. Okay, Canada. So the question is, will Trudeau win, and will he get a majority if he does win? Canada. Two of Pentacles could go either way here, troops. We've got our bats coming out. Now, this is the tightrope. Okay, here. Trudeau effectively is on a tightrope, right? Underneath, he's reached the end of a cycle. Okay, the 10 of Wands, which is the 10 of Swords, see all the bats in the tree at night. His popularity is waning. He'll always have some popularity, and he's certainly better than some of the opposition, right? But his personal popularity is waning, and it's a 10. He's at the end of that cycle. Behind him, the Ace of Swords, another bat in this sort of diamond shape here. So it's like, this is in the past position. He's always been able to pull it out and be the shiny one at the last minute. He's always managed to do that. But I'm a bit twitchy. There's the Wheel of Fortune here. Now, does it mean he's going to spin it one more time and pull it out, or has he run out of gas in that way? The Five of Cups is the card of loss, and the Queen of Fire, the Queen of Wands. Can Canadian viewers please tell me, is there a woman contending the next election? Because I don't have a sense here of whether she's from the left or the right or the middle or anything. Could be a really conservative woman too, to be honest. But I think it could be a woman who beats him, or women could get him over the line. It all hinges on women and the female principle here. I'll do another reading nearer the time, but for now, suffice to say, he either has to pull out the famous Trudeau charm and get those women to the polls, or he could be beaten by a woman. We'll keep our eye on that, will we not? Okay, so other things I want to let you know. I'm doing a collaboration with Johnny and others on your Wednesday 28th, which is next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live. They always do the live. They're so clever, the young things. I still don't know how to do it. So I go on other people's. Awesome. Okay. So for now, all my love to you, intrepid viewers. Hang in there. You're doing really well. Breathing, breathing. Bye for now. I'm going to try and put this up. Let's see. Ciao.